Hey guys, hoping all is well with everyone. So in this video we're going to be continuing our read-along of The Secret Zoo by Brian Chick, and today we're going to be continuing on with chapter 20. And as always, if any pictures come across, I'll be showing them, but please feel free to follow along. Chapter 20, Gifteds in the Grottoes. "You guys see anything?" Noah asked into his bone mic, referring to Sasquatch tracks. He was walking with Blizzard and Sam in the NSE north-southeast end of the grottos. After entering the tunnels beneath butterfly nets, the crossers had met up with Little Bighorn, and Tank had divided them into groups. Noah with Blizzard and Sam, Ella with Little Bighorn and Solana, Megan with Podgy and Hannah, and Richie with P-Dog, the Prairie Dogs, and Tamarin. Then Tank had walked off to investigate on his own. "Nuh-uh," said a girl's voice into his ear. "Ella." "Nothing here," said Megan. "Negative," said Richie. "Just me and the walls," said a fifth voice that Noah recognized as Tank's. As the airwaves fell silent, Noah concentrated on the tunnel around him. Lined with old bricks, the walls reached several feet over his head to support an arched ceiling. The dirt floor was pitted with shallow holes. A few fluorescent bulbs were set in the walls, and shadows pooled just beyond their dim throes of light. Occasional velvet curtains marked portals to new spots. Noah passed a gateway to Arctic Town, the secret rhinorama, and the south end of the grottos. "Blizz," Noah said to the mighty polar bear beside him, "remember what you need to do if we see a Sasquatch." Blizzard directed his dark-eyed stare at Noah, then tipped his head and growled. "That's right, buddy," Noah answered. "You chew off its head." A view rose in Noah's ear. "Sounds great for you, Noah, but who's supposed to help me?" "You got P-Dog, don't you?" Noah said. Richie stared down at P-Dog, who was scurrying beside his feet, and shook his head. "A prairie dog? You get a polar bear, Ella gets a rhino, and I get a prairie dog." "Not just one prairie dog," said a bunch of voices that Richie reorganized as Ella's. "A whole bunch." "Is this your usual sarcasm?" Richie asked as he, Tamarin, and the large coterie of prairie dogs rounded a bend in the tunnel by a curtain marked Ostrich Island. "I can't really tell without seeing your face, or as sarcasm becomes such a part of your personality that you forget when you're using it." Ella just laughed, the bone mic carrying her crackle into the airwaves and the ears of the other crossers. Richie cursed Ella under his breath. "I heard that," Ella said. "What?" Richie said. "How?" Richie heard Tank laughing. Then the big man's voice rose in his head. "Don't forget, the bone mic picks up the vibrations in your skull, not the volume of your voice." "Oops," Richie said. "Good thing it can't read my thoughts." Tamarin looked down at Richie. "Don't worry, kid. The Descenders, we got your back. That's one of the reasons we're here." Richie nodded, and a wave of appreciation rolled over him. After what the scouts had gone through in the secret Pollywog Bog, he was relieved to be walking beside a brawny teenager, especially one that could sprout a huge, crushing tail. As the airways became silent, Richie turned his attention to the prairie dogs around him again. They were scampering about, sniffing at clumps of dirt and half-buried rocks, their short, pointy tails whipping the air just above their wide rumps. Using their front paws, some climbed short ways up to the walls to dab their moist snouts at interesting spots along the bricks. Richie was certain they were trying to pick up the scent of a Sasquatch. "Megan," Richie said, "how are you guys doing?" Megan glanced at Hannah, then looked down at Podgy to find his beady black eyes in the dim tunnel light. The penguin seemed uninterested and unconcerned in his normal way. "We're somewhere in the west territory of the grottos, I think. No sign of Sasquatches have been through, though." Tank's voice boomed in the ear. "Don't forget to look for tufts of hair. They're always falling out." After a few seconds, he added, "You guys getting the hang of the headsets?" Megan nodded. realizing Tank couldn't see her, then said, "Roger." Ella said, "Roger, Charlie, Bravo, Delta, prepare for takeoff," in what Megan thought was a perfect imitation of a male pilot. Megan smiled. Only her best friend couldn't be making jokes at a time like this. "Girl," Tank said, "you're about as goofy as they come." "You know me and phonetic designation, Tank. I can barely help myself." They continued on in a silence for a bit. Megan, Podgy, and Hannah walked through a portal to an adjoining area of the grottoes and appeared in a dark passage lined with gray cinder blocks. Water dripped from a few cracks in the flat ceiling, and mold grew in recessed spots. Bugs crawled all along the walls, and the dank air seemed to press down on them. From around a bend came 3 grizzly bears with heads as round as beach balls. Megan immediately realized they were gifted on patrol. As they moved past Megan, Podgy, and Hannah, the bears paid them little mind. One unintentionally swung its wide rump onto Podgy, who teetered on one webbed foot and, with flailing flippers, barely avoided toppling over. Not long after the bears were gone, 2 lions pushed out from a curtain and padded down the tunnel. More gifteds, Megan guessed. As they walked by a thin stream of water falling from a ceiling crack, Megan reached up her palm and let water splash down on her fingers. Into her bone mic, she said, "It's pretty wet over here. Tank, you sure these tunnels are safe?" "Safe as they've ever been," Tank answered. "You probably near a bunch of portals to places with water. Sometimes water saturates the ground near the gateways. We're not sure why it happens, but it's nothing to worry about." Megan shook her head in amazement and swept her stare along the walls. All these tunnels that connected the Clarksville Zoo to the secret zoo, it still felt like something from a dream. As the crossers rounded a corner, Ella's voice rose in her ear. Well, well, look who it is." Richie spoke up. "I hope you're not looking at a Sasquatch." "Negative, Charlie Brown Bravo. I'm staring at our new pal, Punchy." Hopping straight toward Ella were 6 kangaroos. As their hind legs heaving forward and back, the tips of their ears nearly swiped the ceiling. One of the kangaroos had an ear that was bent over sideways. Punchy. Little Bighorn let out a snort and, to allow room for the kangaroos, stepped to one side of the tunnel, bumping into Ella, who brushed against his leathery skin and almost fell sideways. The rhino lowered his head and pointed his horn at the kangaroos in a protective, "get too close and I'll skewer you" way. As the kangaroos hopped past, they kept nervous stares locked on the horn. Punchy, the last one to go by, cocked back one of his short forelimbs and then bopped the side of the rhino's head. In anger, Little Bighorn swung his snout around, his horn just missing the kangaroo's tailed rump. "Yikes!" Ella said. "What's wrong?" Noah asked into the airwaves. "Little Big, he almost had a shish kebab out of Punchy." Ella swung her head around and watched the kangaroo disappear behind a bend in the tunnel. Some time passed, and the airwaves stayed silent. Ella, Little Bighorn, and Solana passed a portal to Grottoes east-west and another to Bear with Us. As Little Bighorn sniffed the ground, bursts of air shot through his nostrils and stirred clouds of dirt. Ella and Solana walked beside the big rhino and looked around for footprints or tufts of hair. After an hour of searching, Tank called everyone back to the grottos beneath butterfly nets, the place they started. Richie was the last to return, and as he rounded a bend in the tunnel, the prairie dogs ran circles around his feet, nipping playfully at one another. "Nobody saw nothing?" Tank asked once the full group of crossers had gathered. "Nope," Ella said. "Not a thing." Megan and Noah shook their heads. "Okay," Tank said. "Time to get you guys home. The rest of us will take it from here now. You guys keep the headsets. Just don't hide them in your underwear drawer so your parents find them when they're putting away laundry." The scouts nodded. They said quick goodbyes to their animal friends with pats on their hands, then walked to the tunnel branch that led to butterfly nets. At the base of the stairs, Noah stopped and turned back. "Tank," Noah said. "Yeah?" "The Sasquatches. Are they—" As Noah's voice trailed off, his stare shifted back and forth on the ground, as if he dropped his words and were trying to find them. "What's up?" Tank spoke into Noah's awkward silence. Noah lifted his gaze. "The outside world, our world. How much danger are we really in?" The way Tank looked away from Noah made him nervous. He rubbed a spot on his bald head and said, "Sasquatches in the Grottoes? We've never seen anything like this. They've never gone this far." Though Tank had done his best to avoid Noah's question, he'd answered it perfectly. Noah nodded, turned again, and then led his friends up the stairs back into his neighborhood, a place that was under assault. Chapter 21, Girls' Night Out. "What about Derek Johnson?" "What about Derek Johnson? You think he's cute?" Ella thumbed through the photo book of her mind and stopped on a picture of Derek Johnson, a new 5th grader at Clarksville Elementary, then looked him over for a second. "Nope." She fell silent and reconsidered. "A little bit, maybe. He's got those green eyes and that hair, but are you asking me if he's a Hollywood hot? Not a chance." Megan smiled, but said nothing. The two girls were lounging in Fort Scout, Megan in the beanbag, Ella lying on her back on the floor, her legs propped up on a chair. They were bundled up to protect themselves from the cold, and as they talked, their cloudy breath rose like steam. Noah was inside watching television, and Richie was at home. It was almost 8 o'clock on Tuesday, just a day after the scouts had explored the grottos and practiced using their headsets. For the past hour, most of their conversation had been about the secret zoo, the Sasquatches, the Tarsiers, the Descenders. But their thoughts and words had finally drifted to lighter topics. Life, school, and now a rare topic between the two of them, boys. "What about Ryan?" Megan asked. "Ryan Whalen?" Ella grunted. "Are you kidding me? He always has a little booger in his nose. Have you noticed that?" Ella could tell by the reach of Megan's smile that she had. "Why doesn't he pick that thing? I have no idea. He's had that boog since, like, 3rd grade." The two of them broke out laughing, Megan so hard that she nearly rolled out of the beanbag. Megan threw out another name. "Jake? Jake Peterson?" Megan nodded, her pigtails wagging. "I don't know," Ella said. "What about you?" In a flash of Christmas tree lights, Ella could see that Megan was blushing. Her friend, braver than anyone Ella knew, was shy about her feelings towards boys. Just the topic made her squirm. Megan shrugged and nervously adjusted her glasses. "Yes or no?" Ella said. "I'm not letting you pass with a shrug this time." Megan shifted in the beanbag. "Not really," she said at last. Ella smiled. "Not really is a lot like a little bit." Megan pulled her shoulders up to her ears. "Not accepting shrugs," Ella reminded. "Okay," Megan blurted out. "A little bit, I guess." Ella thought to tease her friend, then decided against it. Megan asked, "What about Richie?" "Oh, gee, tell me you're not serious. Richie?" Smiling, Megan said, "You have to pretend that he's not our Richie. Just a guy in the streets, someone you've never met." "And his nerdiness?" "Gone," Megan said. "No big glasses, no pocket full of pens." Ella tried to imagine a Richie reduced to his bare looks. After a full minute, she shook her head, saying, "Nope. I can't do it. Richie is Richie. off-flood pants and flashy shoes? I can't see him in any other way. Megan clapped her hands once. Me either. For a few minutes, the girls went on like that, discussing boys and the things that did or did not make them cute. For Ella, the topic, as always, felt strange and exciting, especially when sharing it with Megan. The two of them had been friends their whole lives. For years, they thought boys were the grossest things in the world. Now, they barely knew what to do with their own feelings. Do you want to get married? Megan asked. Not in 5th grade, Ella teased as she rose off the floor. Eventually, though? Ella sat at the table, turned to her friend, and watched the Christmas lights reveal Megan's sincerity. She scooped up one of Richie's electrical gadgets from the table, a tiny bulb affixed to a wire, and twirled it in her fingertips. Richie and all his stuff. What is this thing? I'm not accepting shrugs, Megan said, referring to how Ella was dodging the question. As Ella turned over the question, images of her family appeared. She saw her mother, her father. She saw them together, then she saw them apart. She envisioned herself lying in a bed at night, crying into her pillow. How long had this gone? Weeks? Months? How long had she blamed herself for her parents' divorce? As Ella absently watched Richie's gadget spin across her fingertips, her stomach clenched and pain poked into her heart. She had long known the emotional hurt could become physical. No, Ella said, her tone flat and cold. My mom said it best. Marriage is momentary. It doesn't have to be, Megan shot back. Ella considered this for a long time. At last, she said, but who gets to decide? Ella lifted her gaze and watched Megan appear and disappear in consecutive flashes of light. How often do you think about him? Megan asked. Every day, Ella answered. My mom still cries at night. I don't. You shouldn't be afraid to. Ella smiled, but there was anger in it. It's easier to hate than it is to hurt. Ella, you can't. But Ella jumped out of her chair so suddenly that Megan's words stopped. She tossed down Richie's gadget, walked over to the table with the dancing snowman, and pressed the button. With a smile, she watched the 3 globes of his body shift and shake as the song played. We're just days away from Christmas, she said. Let's stay in good cheer. Megan nodded and forced a weak smile. She knew what all the scouts knew. Ella wasn't avoiding the topic of her father to spare herself the pain. She was doing it to spare her friends the pain. You're right about one thing, Megan said. She motioned to the snowman. That thing? It's just the right amount of perfectly annoying. Ella giggled to let Megan know it was okay to laugh, and then they both did. Ella pushed out her rump and rolled her hips from side to side in dead-on mimicry of the snowman. Megan laughed harder than ever and rolled around in the beanbag, chanting, woo, woo, and pumping her fist above her head in a hip-hop way as Ella danced around the fort. As Ella strutted near a wall, she suddenly stopped as her gaze happened to fall upon something outside the window. In the porch light 3 houses down, something was moving around in her neighbor's backyard. But this something wasn't just moving. It was hopping. Ella dropped her hands to the windowsill and peered out to see a kangaroo. Somehow it had gotten beyond the secret zoo the zoo wall and was now jumping around, looking confused about how to get back. Megan! Ella shouted. Come here! Quick! In what seemed less than a second, her friend was at her side, staring out. Oh my! What's it doing? The grottoes, Ella answered. It must have gotten confused in them and taken the wrong way out. The kangaroo became startled by something and then headed off away from Fort Scout, its hind legs kicking up a tiny cloud of snow. Within seconds, it was gone. Megan turned her stare back and forth between Ella and the place the kangaroo had been, her pigtails whipping around like the beaded strings of a spinner drum. What do we do? Megan asked. Exactly what we're supposed to do. Ella answered. With that, Ella ran across the fort, dropped down on the slide, and rode it to the ground. With Megan at her heels, she tore off across the Nowicki's yard in chase of the kangaroo. And I'll stop the video there, ending chapter 21. But in our next video, we'll be continuing the Secret Zoo, Riddles in Danger, with chapter 21. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Take good care of yourselves and be safe. Bye.